That day or the next, after a tedious drive through a land of food crops, we reached a pleasant little burg and put up at Chestnut Court. Nice cabins, damp green grounds, apple trees, an old swing, and a tremendous sunset, which the tired child ignored. She had wanted to go through Casbeam, because it was only 30 miles north from her hometown, but on the following morning I found her quite listless, with no desire to see again the sidewalk where she had played hopscotch some 5 years before. For obvious reasons, I had rather dreaded that side trip, even though we had agreed not to make ourselves conspicuous in any way, to remain in the car and not to look up old friends. My relief at her abandoning the project was spoiled by the thought that, had she felt I were totally against the nostalgic possibilities of Pisky, as I had been last year, she would not have given up so easily. On my mentioning this with a sigh, she sighed too and complained of being out of sorts. She wanted to remain in bed till tea time at least, with lots of magazines. And then, if she felt better, she suggested we just continue westward. I must say she was very sweet and languid, and craved for fresh fruits, and I decided to go and fetch her a toothsome picnic lunch in Casbeam. Our cabin stood on the timbered crest of a hill, and from our window you could see the road winding down and then running as straight as a hair parting between 2 rows of chestnut trees towards the pretty town, which looked singularly distinct and toy-like in the pure morning distance. One could make out an elf-like girl on an insect-like bicycle, and a dog, a bit too large proportionately, all as clear as those pilgrims and mules winding up wax-pale roads in old paintings with blue hills and red little people. I have the European urge to use my feet when a drive can be dispensed with, so I leisurely walked down, eventually meeting the cyclist, a plain, plump girl with pigtails, followed by a huge St. Bernard dog with orbits like pansies. In Casbeam, a very old barber gave me a very mediocre haircut. He babbled of a baseball-playing son of his, and at every explodent spat into my neck, and every now and then wiped his glasses on my sheet wrap or interrupted his tremulous scissor work to produce faded newspaper clippings, and so inattentive was I that it came as a shock to realize, as he pointed to an easeled photograph among the ancient grey lotions, that the moustached young ball-player had been dead for the last 30 years. I had a cup of hot, flavourless coffee, bought a bunch of bananas for my monkey, and spent another 10 minutes or so in a delicatessen store. At least an hour and a half must have elapsed when this homeward-bound little pilgrim appeared on the winding road leading to Chestnut Castle. The girl I had seen on my way to town was now loaded with linen, and engaged in helping a misshapen man whose big head and coarse features reminded me of the Bertoldo character in Low Italian comedy. They were cleaning the cabins, of which there was a dozen or so on Chestnut Crest, all pleasantly spaced amid the copious verdure. It was noon, and most of them, with a final bang of their screen doors, had already got rid of their occupants. A very elderly, almost mummy-like couple in a very new model were in the act of creeping out of one of the contiguous garages. From another, a red hood protruded in somewhat codpiece fashion, and nearer to our cabin, a strong and handsome young man with a shock of black hair and blue eyes was putting a portable refrigerator into a station wagon. For some reason, he gave me a sheepish grin as I passed. On the grass expanse opposite, in the many-limbed shade of luxuriant trees, the familiar St. Bernard dog was guarding his mistress's bicycle, and nearby a young woman, far gone in the family way, had seated a wrapped baby on a swing and was rocking it gently, while a jealous boy of 2 or 3 was making a nuisance of himself by trying to push or pull the swing-board. He finally succeeded in getting himself knocked down by it, and bawled loudly as he lay supine on the grass, while his mother continued to smile gently at neither of her present children. I recall so clearly these minutiae, probably because I was to check my impressions so thoroughly only a few minutes later. And besides, something in me had been on guard ever since that awful night in Beardsley. I now refused to be diverted by the feeling of well-being that my walk had engendered, by the young summer breeze that enveloped the nape of my neck, the giving crunch of the damp gravel, the juicy tidbit I had sucked out at last from a hollow tooth, and even the comfortable weight of my provisions, which the general condition of my heart should not have allowed me to carry. But even that miserable pump of mine seemed to be working sweetly, and I felt adolori d'amoureuse langueur, to quote dear old Ronsard, as I reached my cottage where I had left my Dolores.